Folks, gather round, because tonight we're diving deep into the heartland of America, where things are tougher than a $2 steak. We're talking about the impact of tariffs on our nation's small farms. It's a story of economic hardship, political wrangling, and the resilience of those who work the land. Picture this: rolling fields, bustling farmers markets, and the idyllic image of American agriculture. But behind this picturesque facade, a storm is brewing. The Trump administration's trade wars and subsequent tariffs have hit small farms hard, leaving many struggling to stay afloat. These tariffs, essentially taxes on imported goods, were intended to protect American industries and bring back manufacturing jobs. However, the law of unintended consequences reared its ugly head. Instead of the promised prosperity, many small farms found themselves caught in the crossfire, facing rising costs and shrinking markets. This isn't just about balance sheets and economic indicators, it's about real people, hard-working Americans who rise before the sun and sweat their way through the day to put food on our tables. Their livelihoods, their heritage, and their very way of life are at stake. Now, the idea behind tariffs isn't inherently bad. It's like putting a bodyguard on your economy, making sure foreign competitors don't undercut domestic industries. But like most things in life, it's all about balance. The Trump administration, known for its go big or go home approach, slapped tariffs on goods from China, Mexico, the European Union, and others. This sparked a series of retaliatory tariffs, creating a tit-for-tat trade war that left many scratching their heads. The agricultural sector, particularly vulnerable to trade disruptions, found itself on the front lines of this economic battle. Soybean farmers, for instance, saw their exports to China plummet as the Asian giant turned to other suppliers. The price of steel, a crucial material for farm equipment and infrastructure, also skyrocketed due to tariffs, adding another layer of financial strain on farmers already operating on thin margins. It's like trying to bake a cake with one hand tied behind your back while someone keeps jacking up the price of flour. While large agricultural corporations might have the resources to weather the storm, small farms, the backbone of rural America, found themselves struggling to stay afloat. These are family operations often passed down through generations, where every dollar counts and every decision has a ripple effect. The tariffs created a perfect storm of challenges: increased input costs, reduced export markets, and depressed commodity prices. Farmers who had borrowed heavily to invest in their operations found themselves squeezed by rising interest rates and shrinking profits. Take, for example, the dairy industry. American dairy farmers were already grappling with low milk prices and oversupply when tariffs on Canadian dairy products were imposed. This led to a retaliatory tariff on U.S. dairy exports, further exacerbating the problem. The situation became so dire that some farmers were forced to dump milk, cull herds, and even sell their farms, marking the end of a way of life for many. It's a heartbreaking reality that underscores the very real human cost of these trade policies. As the pressure mounted and the economic realities of the tariffs hit home, rural America, often overlooked in the national conversation, found its voice. Farmers, accustomed to the solitary nature of their work, banded together, organizing protests, rallies, and lobbying efforts to bring attention to their plight. Tractorcades descended on state capitals. Farmers held signs reading "Tariffs hurt the heartland and rural America, forgotten again," and social media became a platform for sharing stories of hardship and resilience. The message was clear: the backbone of America was hurting. The American Farm Bureau Federation, a powerful agricultural lobbying group, emerged as a vocal critic of the tariffs, arguing that they were hurting the very people they were intended to help. Even within the Republican Party, typically supportive of Trump's policies, cracks began to appear as lawmakers from farm states felt the heat from their constituents. Section 5. Empty Promises, the Unseen Investment Boom. One of the central arguments for imposing tariffs was that they would lead to a surge in domestic investment, creating jobs and boosting the economy. However, in many rural communities, this promised investment boom failed to materialize. While some companies did reshore manufacturing operations, these gains were often offset by job losses in industries negatively impacted by the tariffs or by automation, which continued to replace human labor at a steady clip. The promised flood of foreign investment also turned out to be more of a trickle. Uncertainty surrounding trade policies and the threat of further tariffs made many international companies hesitant to invest in the United States. This lack of investment further compounded the problems facing rural communities already struggling with declining populations, limited access to healthcare and education, and a shrinking tax base. It's a classic case of the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. Section 6. Political fault lines, tariffs, and the divide. The debate over tariffs exposed the deep political divisions that continue to plague American society. While some lauded the tariffs as a necessary step to protect American jobs and interests, others condemned them as reckless protectionism that would ultimately harm the economy. The issue became a political football, with both sides digging in their heels and demonizing the other. Rural communities, often portrayed as bastions of conservative values, found themselves at the center of this political tug-of-war. The tariffs also highlighted the growing disconnect between urban and rural America. While many in cities and suburbs felt insulated from the immediate impacts of the trade war, those in rural communities experienced the consequences firsthand. This fueled a sense of resentment and alienation, further widening the gap between these two worlds. Section 7. A helping hand. The role of farm aid and retail giants. As the plight of small farmers gained national attention, calls for government assistance grew louder. The Trump administration, facing mounting pressure from its own party and the agricultural lobby, rolled out a series of aid packages aimed at providing financial relief to farmers hurt by the trade war. However, these aid packages, while providing a temporary lifeline, were criticized as being insufficient to address the underlying problems and for being poorly targeted, with a disproportionate share of the funds going to large agricultural corporations. Retail giants like Walmart, caught in the crossfire of the trade war, also found themselves drawn into the debate. When Walmart announced price increases due to the tariffs, Trump publicly criticized the company, telling them to eat the tariffs. This public spat highlighted the complex web of interdependencies within the global economy and the ripple effects of protectionist policies. It also underscored the precarious position of retailers caught between rising costs and consumer expectations. Section 8. The uncertain horizon, navigating the future of farming. As the dust settles on the trade wars and the long-term impacts of the tariffs become clearer, one thing is certain: the agricultural landscape has been irrevocably altered. Small farms already facing a myriad of challenges are left to navigate an uncertain future. The COVID-19 pandemic, which disrupted supply chains and exposed the vulnerabilities of a globalized food system, further complicated the situation, forcing farmers to adapt to rapidly changing market conditions and consumer demands. Climate change, with its unpredictable weather patterns, extreme events, and long-term shifts in growing conditions, adds another layer of complexity to the already challenging equation. Farmers, once stewards of the land, are now on the front lines of a changing climate. Despite these challenges, there is hope. Many small farmers are embracing innovation, adopting new technologies, and exploring alternative marketing channels to reach consumers directly. The farm-to-table movement, local food systems, and online platforms offer new opportunities for resilience and growth. Section 9. Conclusion: the price of protectionism. The story of tariffs and their impact on small farms is a cautionary tale about the unintended consequences of protectionist policies. While the intention may be to protect domestic industries, the reality is far more complex. The tariffs, while providing a temporary boost to some sectors, ultimately came at a cost, particularly for small farms, which bore the brunt of retaliatory tariffs and market disruptions. The promised investment boom failed to materialize in many rural communities, leaving them struggling to keep up. The political fallout from the tariffs further divided an already polarized nation, highlighting the disconnect between urban and rural America. The debate over trade and its impact on the economy is far from over. As we move forward, it is crucial to learn from the mistakes of the past and to pursue trade policies that are fair, sustainable, and that benefit all Americans, not just a select few. The livelihoods of our farmers and the future of our rural communities depend on it.